Hello friends, welcome to this session. In this session, I will be discussing with you how PYQs have to be used for the purpose of cracking the code of PSIR Optional. देखो PYQs are important across the subjects and they are important across the stage of examination. All right, across the stage of examination when it comes to UPSC. Now I would say there is a general understanding of why PYQs are important. There is a general understanding, but what we will also do here in this session is we will understand specifically why PYQs are important. Second thing that we will do, or rather third thing, because we will also look into general importance, then we will get into specific importance for the purpose of PSIR. Then what we will do is we will try to understand through PYQs what topic has to be read with what orientation. All right, so this is what I am going to do for the next say 1.5 hours. Now if you ask me why PYQs are important, if you ask me in general why PYQs are important, so obviously PYQs are important for the purpose of understanding the expectations of UPSC. Expectations. ठीक है, this is the general importance of PYQs, no doubt about that. Now let us get into specifically why PYQs are important, for the purpose of PSIR as an optional. All right, so if I take into consideration specifically to PSIR, the first importance basically lies in the length of the subject. Now PSIR is one of the most lengthy subjects, I would say, when it comes to optional. ठीक है, there are benefits of it also, but there are some drawbacks also. ठीक है, drawback ये है कि भाई बहुत lengthy है. That is a drawback. It is a very lengthy subject. I understand that. ठीक है. Now again, we are not into studying of political science for the purpose of research. We are not into academics, right? At least I am not. I am clear about that. Okay. So we are not into academics. Our orientation towards subject is simple. It is a utility for us. It is a tool for us. We will utilize this subject for what? For the purpose of getting rank into the examination. Hence, even if it is lengthy, then we have to find some shortcut as to get hold over it. Shortcut not with respect to understanding the concept. There cannot be shortcut with respect to understanding the concept. ठीक है, shortcut with respect to avoiding the lengthiness and avoiding the undue confusion which comes with that lengthiness. Just because the subject is lengthy, it does not mean that you have to basically run through multitude of resources when it comes to PSIR. Right? So what PYQs will tell me in PSIR? PYQs will tell me focus areas. ठीक है, they will tell me focus areas with respect to the subject of PSIR कि क्या कब पढ़ना है. More importantly, it will tell me किस चीज में क्या पढ़ना है. What has to be read in what topic. ठीक है, so it will provide me division of the subject based on its importance. Division of the subject based on importance. It will of course increase my focus. It will of course narrow down my approach towards the subject. बात खत्म हो गई. Next thing why PYQs are important is, that PYQs are important from the point of PSIR is the subject of PSIR overlaps with GS. देखो, almost 70 to 75% of the subject basically overlaps. Almost 70 to 75% of the subject basically overlaps with general studies, right? Now what happens because of it? What basically happens because of it? You are not able to know what is the content necessary, what basically is the content necessary for PSIR as an optional and general studies. देखो, you have to study election commission both, ठीक है? You have to study election commission for the purpose of GS, you have to study election commission for the purpose of PSIR also. But the attitude with which election commission is asked with respect to GS is different from the way in which it is asked in PSIR. In GS, they will ask you problems with respect to election commission. They will ask you how to reform the workings of election commission. In PSIR, what they will ask? They will basically ask you about the composition of election commission. They will ask you to evaluate its role till now. They will ask you to narrate its evolution. They will ask you about its comparison to other election processes around the world, other election bodies around the world. Alright. So if you take into consideration, if you basically take into consideration election commission from the point of GS, it will not help you in PSIR. And if you take into consideration election commission only from the point of view of PSIR, na, it will not help you in GS. For GS also you have to, even if your optional is PSIR, na, I would say in GS again you have to go for PYQ analysis. Ki bhai, if question is asked on election commission or constitutional body, other constitutional bodies for that matter, what is the focus area? What is basically the focus area? And how the focus area between optional and GS will differ. Of course, we will do it in our course. As we go along now, we will do it. In fact, today itself, what I will do is I will try to distinguish. Don't worry about it. Okay. Third thing that is important from PSIR point of view, matlab PYQ analysis, why they are important from PSIR point of view are obviously current affairs and the analysis of current affairs. Again, this is a plus point of PSIR as an optional. It to an extent also is the minus point of PSIR as an optional. Okay, it is up to you whether you search opportunity in problem or whether you search problem in an opportunity. It depends upon your mindset obviously. So if I take into consideration the subject of PSIR, what do I notice? I notice overwhelming amount of current affairs in the subject. Okay? Current affairs basically are part of the subject. You basically can link almost all the topics mentioned in the syllabus of PSIR with current affairs. Now, what type of current affairs have to be picked by you for the purpose of PSIR? That has to be known by you. For example, we this year had our general election. Also, recently had our general election. Also, what we see over the period of time is assembly elections. Also, sometimes some local body elections. For example, Bombay Municipal Corporation or NDMC, New Delhi Municipal Corporation. Those elections come in news. So what I have to adopt for the purpose of writing my answers when it comes to even the static part of the syllabus. For example, if the question directly is asked with respect to voting pattern, it is a different thing. Obviously, it is a different thing. Then you have to get hold of voting pattern and their analysis that is provided to you through the newspapers, through current affairs, next day of the counting. Bilkul sahi baat hai. Now consider this. Democracy or elections in the subject of PSIR are also static topics. Right? So wahan pe how to use and what type of current affairs have to be used, that also will be known to you through analysis of PYQs. How that analysis has to be done so that you infer to that particular information, that is my job. Okay, you are part of this course, so that is absolutely my job. मेरा काम है आपको बताना कि if a particular static if a particular static pointer is provided, for example, democracy, it is a dynamic idea, I know, but it is a static concept na. Matlab, when you study democracy in PSIR, what do you study? You study when it started, how it evolved, what ideas got into democracy, what are the different types of democracies, right? So if there is a question that is aligned towards the static part of the concept, right, is democracy, it is therefore then my job along with you, obviously you will be doing it, I will be doing it together, we will be doing it together. It is my job कि भाई ठीक है, ये concept part में ना, this current affairs has to be in line. Only then what will happen is you will get marks out of it. Only then what will happen is you will get marks out of it. And even in direct current affairs wala question na, for example, if the question is on women as a voter, yeah, in last few elections what we have seen is in Bengal, in Bihar, in Maharashtra, in Madhya Pradesh, what we have seen is women voters being the game changers. Women voters basically being the game changers. So what impact does it basically have on election process and the perception of election? ठीक है, एक दो तो अभी बता देता हूं. What have women voter contributed basically to the elections? They have contributed for our elections to be more unpredictable. Why are opinion polls getting wrong? Opinion polls basically are getting wrong because primarily the opinion polls have been oriented towards knowing in which or with which narrative or towards what orientations will male votes vote in an election. In the last few elections, therefore, we see opinion polls getting wrong. Why? Because women voters played a bigger role. Women voters basically played a bigger role. Okay? So this type of info will be provided or will be communicated obviously by me to you with the help of PYQ. So PYQ ke through na, what basically we will do is we'll catch hold of a current affairs and we will squeeze that type of information which will be important for you to write the examination. And this can be successfully done. UPSC, even with a dynamic subject like PSIR, through its analysis of PYQs is predictable. More or less it is predictable. Okay. Third thing that I would basically ask you to focus upon PYQs is content. Okay. When I say content, na, what content? Now this I talk about from the point of view of GS also, but it is more important to understand the content that you use from the point of view of optional. Okay. In GS and in optional, what I have seen is there is over reliance on notes. Notes are important, no doubt about it. Okay. Notes are important. But notes are important when it comes to consolidation. Again, I am not against any institute, I am not against any person who basically delivers notes on the subject of PSIR in specific or optionals in particular. If they are doing it and if the notes are good, use it. Bilkul use it, 100% use it. But remember, notes basically will not be able to provide you, notes basically, my dear friends, will not be able to provide you the depth that is needed. Okay? And when I say depth, depth has to be according to the requirement of the examination. As I told you, we are basically not here for the purpose of getting a PhD. That is not our motto, we are not into academics. So when I look into theory of Plato or theory of Aristotle, for example, theory of Aristotle, if I go into the depth of it, there is infinity. There is there are infinite number of sources available. But what do I know? What do I need to know with respect to the theory of Aristotle when it comes to slavery, or understanding of Aristotle when it comes to slavery from the point of view of PSIR? What basically I have to know? How he took into consideration, utility. How he took into consideration the concept of equality. How he basically took into consideration the concept of justice. How he took into consideration the concept of state regulating its population. And how that theory is looked upon today and is there any relevance of it? मेरे को बोलो with respect to slavery what else UPSC can ask? These are the only 5 things. And once you know that these are the pointers now, on the basis of which question will be arriving, you will be ready to face that question in a better way. And therefore what you have to do is you have to use a content which provides you enough depth on these 5 topics. Enough depth on these 5 topics. ठीक है? So that is what basically PSIR का PYQ analysis will tell you. ठीक है? That is what PSIR का PYQ analysis will tell you कि भाई content है ना, तो your content should basically take off this. Again, because PSIR is such a big subject, what I have seen is, and this happens because of so many influencers and toppers speaking about the diversity of content. Influencers and sometimes even toppers, what they will basically suggest you is read the original material. So for example, when I was an aspirant, there were some mistakes made by me when I pursued PSIR, the subject PSIR. Now what were those mistakes? First mistake from my side was I actually read some actual contents. That was not bad, I enjoyed them. But during my preparation days when I was aspirant, that was not the time. It could have been the case that I would get selected, then I would read it in the academy. Or even if I did not get selected, so it was, which I did later also, after my attempts were done, then I sat down and went through those contents, went through those original sources with some comfort. But when I was an aspirant, I should not have done it. Why? Itna time nahi hai. And so much depth of understanding is also not required. Right? Other thing that they will tell you is 4 to 5 sources with respect to one topic as such. Thinkers agar मैं देखने गया ना, if I take into consideration only thinkers, Baba, there are so many books available. From Indian authors to Western authors. What is the use of it? More or less nothing. So you have to choose the content based upon, choose the content based upon the requirement of examination. The requirement of PYQs. And in PSIR, what may happen is one set of content as such, one books as such will not be sufficient. It may happen that for a certain section, you may require 2 books or 3 books. 2 books. Okay, 3rd book is reference. I will tell you what it will be. Don't worry. When we basically move along in this particular course, now I will tell you from which reference book to read which pages. I will do that for you. Okay. But if you ask me in general, what has to be read? Now, I will say first go through IGNOU. Okay. I know I am faculty of a reputed institute. I should basically promote something that has been written by me. I will do that also, don't worry. The notes are being made by me also. But IGNOU is the source that will enroot your understanding from the most basic ground root level. I would suggest you to first go through IGNOU. Okay? And then books that I will recommend it to you. For example, thinkers के लिए you have gone through IGNOU, I will say कि ठीक है 1 or 2 sources or some pages from this source. In fact, for thinkers now you don't need anything more than IGNOU. Even then, just for the purpose of increasing your depth, providing more relevance, providing more interconnectivity, सही है, ये कर ले. उतना कर लो, बहुत हो गया. So PYQs also have to be looked into from the point of view of content. ठीक है? Then I will say interlinking. Baba, PSIR is the subject of interlinkages. It is the subject of interlinkages. Every idea, every thought, every ideology, every understanding of a concept has relevance in today's world, somewhere or the other. somewhere or the other. ठीक है. Even if you take into consideration an idea like fascism, which everybody decries about, it also has relevance. It also has relevance in today's time. Who said no? Right? So their orientation towards interlinking with current affairs, which we have already done, and interlinking within the topics of the syllabus becomes very important. It becomes very important. For example, if I am basically studying the concept of rights in section A, paper 1, I would have to connect it with fundamental rights mentioned in Indian Constitution in section B, paper 1. Now this is one of the easiest example, but some of you have just started preparation, hence I am using this example. आगे जाते जाते obviously the examples that we use ना, they will be more sophisticated in a sense and complicated. I will simplify it for you. डरना नहीं है, आप लोगों ने घबराना नहीं है. You don't be afraid. I am there. All right. Also, if I can stick one more over here, that is notes making. Other than that, for the purpose of doing all of this, it is me. You have become part of this particular course, so it is me. We will do it through our series of lectures, right? But even then, if you do not understand it, so you will be having my number, connect with me. We will be having mentorship sessions, connect with me. ठीक है. अब इसमें सबसे आखिर में क्या आता है पता है? आंसर राइटिंग, विच यू पीपल डू नॉट डू. मतलब सब कुछ है अभी, एवरीथिंग इज अवेलेबल. आंसर राइटिंग यू विल नॉट डू. देन देर इज नो यूज. Then there is basically no use of all this. There is no use of all this, right? One more thing that you do not do, one more thing I have seen students not do, is having a thought process to develop the ideas of PSIR. You people are so much, you people, I am not in a way degrading you, but that is what I have generally seen, and it is also a mistake that I committed. It is not as if I did not commit this mistake. You are so much into gathering content now. You do not analyze the content. ठीक है? You do not discuss the content. Where the problem arises with respect to answer writing is going beyond what you have read. ठीक है? Building a bridge between the thought process and what is expected. वहाँ पे ना, please use me. I will do it by myself also because it is my job. But other than that, you also have to come up. एनालाइज करो, डिस्कस करो. आई एम अवेलेबल, डिस्कस इट विद मी. ठीक है. नाउ कमिंग टू द फर्स्ट पॉइंट विच आई थिंक इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर यू टू अंडरस्टैंड, while analyzing PYQs and what I have come up with. ठीक है. And that is types of topics. That is types of topics. ठीक है. Now in PSIR ना, basically what do we see is there are some topics ना, which require extraordinary focus. ठीक है. A handout will be provided to you. In that handout I have provided you with a graph also. What is the trend of questions being asked? So there are some topics in PSIR na, which are exceedingly important on their own. For example, thinkers, no guesses on this, no prize for guessing this. Thinkers. Second, ideologies, and third, I would say international relations, India and the world. ठीक है, India and the world. Obviously, India and the world has to be further divided to look into focus areas that we will do. Whenever the topic comes up, na, obviously we will do. We'll look into कि भाई कहाँ से question है. देखो, if you analyze your PYQs ना, when it comes to India and the world, when it basically comes to India and the world, the most important part is India and its neighborhood. वहीं से आएंगे सबसे ज़्यादा question. ठीक है. So if I take into consideration these topics, thinkers, ideologies, India and the world. Now why are they important? First and foremost, independently from them, the number of questions that arrive, they are significant. Independently from them, the number of questions that basically arrive, they are significant. They are basically significant. Secondly, these topics, these topics basically where you can use them for interconnection in answers related to other topics is also significant. That is also significant. Alright. So for example, if I am discussing the idea of equality, and the question is oriented in such a way that I have to use thinker like Plato or Aristotle, okay, or John Locke for that matter, or if it is with respect to equality based upon gender, तो obviously J.S. Mills, Hannah Hardin, right? So यहाँ पे क्या हुआ? Question is asked from the topic of equality, but I am using thinkers. So these are the topics now. These basically are the topics that are important on themselves also because questions directly appear from these topics, and also they are important because they basically form good content for other topics to write the answer. They provide a bridge for interlinkage. Second thing that I will suggest, second type of topics that I will say are present in PSIR, are those topics that are important for other topics. Those topics which are important for other topics. Now these are the types of topics now, my dear friends. These basically are the types of topics now. If you ask me, questions upon them are not that many. So if you take into consideration average of last 5 years, questions from equality, okay, in the last 5 years, how many questions have been asked on equality? In total around 7 questions. Okay. If I take into consideration on the other hand, questions that have been asked on thinkers, in the last 5 years, on thinkers alone, it is 13 questions. It goes up to 13 questions. Obviously, if I take into consideration India and the world, the number of questions that have been asked in the last 5 years, it is 18. You will get this graph, you will get this data, don't worry. Okay? And my mind is towards utility, so I basically do not work without data. ठीक है, पढ़ाई करनी है, डेटा रिवॉल्यूशन का यूज तो करना ही पड़ेगा. डेटा यू हैव टू यूज, नो क्वेश्चन अबाउट दैट. योर focus has to be based upon the importance of that topic in the examination. You are not studying PSIR when it comes to UPSC for the sake of knowledge. Nahi, you are studying for the sake of gaining a rank. Alright. So as I told you na, there are topics, for example equality, 5 साल में how many questions have been asked on it? 7 to 8 questions. मतलब if you take into consideration na, if you basically take into consideration na, so equality on itself may not be as important a topic. It is still important because every year on an average 1 question is asked. So it is important. I am not saying it is not important, but then it is important. It is more important from the point of view of providing a fodder for other topics. For example, equality has to be used, equality as a concept has to be used when you talk about thinker. Justice as a concept has to be used when you are talking about thinkers or when you are talking about political ideologies, right? So that is I will say, categorization based on its utility. Utility by itself, it is moderate. ठीक है, I will not say it is less क्योंकि कोई क्वेश्चन आता नहीं है, that all I will not say, but it is moderate, right? Utility from the point of view of other concepts, yes, it is more. So attitude required to study, attitude that is required to study equality justice is different from attitude that is required to study thinkers and ideologies. Time to be spent has to be also different. And then there are third types of topic. Then there is third type of topic. Which are those topics? Questions on which are asked moderately, but their relevance with respect to other concept is relatively low when compared to these topics. ठीक है, topics asked moderately. Oh. Topics asked moderately with, इसको क्या हुआ, with low connection I would say, or moderate connection I would say with other concepts. With other concepts. ठीक है. And one more thing, जबरदस्ती का interconnection नहीं करना. When I say these topics ना, they are moderately important and not so much is basically asked at this point of time from these topics na. Not so much has been asked from this point of view na. And also they are moderate when it comes to influencing the content of other topics na. जानबूझ के लेके नहीं आना इस topic को. Wherever they are required, yes, you have to write. Wherever they are required, yes, you have to write. And again, that is something that I will guide you with. Now, what are the examples of this topic? Primary example that has come up in the last 4 or 5 years. Now, again, it is dynamic. When I was studying, this topic was very important and question used to come from this topic. And other thing is, this topic was also useful for interconnection because of that particular time period. Now, if I consider this topic, now, it is not as important when it comes to interconnection. Question again, one of question every year is asked. But interconnection ka na chance is a bit less. Which is it? Globalization. ठीक है, globalization पे over the period of time in the last 5 years around 7 questions are asked. मतलब obviously more or less 1 question per year. ठीक है, even those questions they are oriented more towards 10 markers. Studying this topic therefore, and attitude of studying this topic therefore has to be slightly different. है ना? It has to be slightly different. So you have to first and foremost differentiate on the way in which a topic is important for you. And सबसे पहला, the first and foremost parameter here will be frequency of the question. Frequency of the topic directly. Second parameter will be frequency of the topic for the content of other topic. And third will be how the same has to be done. ठीक है, how the same linkage has to be built. In the handout that I will provide you now, I have provided you with I have given some examples. I have basically given some examples, and that examples, my dear friends, will help you. But each topic when we get into now, when we basically get into it now, we will do it individually. We basically will do it individually. Don't worry, it will be done. It will basically be done. Alright, I hope all of this is clear. I am now going to get rid of what I have written right now on this board. Alright, and we will move ahead now. And we will have an overview with respect to important topics. Alright, so that you understand where to focus upon what. At least with respect to important topics. Also, as I told you ना, एक बार इग्नू चाट लो, ठीक है, go through इग्नू once, ठीक है, which books in इग्नू, which material in इग्नू, let me know, I will provide it to you. Let me know, I will provide it to you. All right, chalo. Harish, AC लगा दो. It is required. AC is required even when the climate is cool, even when I have slight problem of fever and sinus. Reason basically is ventilation. Okay, so let us look into the first topic, and that is political theory. That is political theory. ठीक है. Now when it comes to political theory, पूरा टॉपिक का नाम क्या? Political theory, meanings and approaches, right? Now what has to be done by you in this particular topic? Individually, yes, I will look into it. I am giving an overview today. Please understand this, all right? So what all has to be understood by you? What all basically has to be understood by you? So the most important thing now, with respect to political theory that has to be understood by you is meaning of certain concepts. Meaning of certain concepts. ठीक है. And which concepts? सबसे पहले तो what is political theory ये तो समझो. First and foremost, the concept that is important for you to be understood is political theory. All right, political theory itself. And then what is also required? What basically is also required? You are required to know what is equality, what basically is justice, what other concepts are included or studied in political theory. You must have an idea of it. And hence, when we study political science, this basically is the last topic that we take up. I have taken it first. Reason for that is we are going by syllabus. All right. And those students who are new into political science, they might have confusion with respect to why I have basically jumped from political theory and gone directly into thinkers. Dekho, as you study thinkers have to be the first part. But यहाँ पे what I am doing is I am first and foremost taking you through the chronology of syllabus. ठीक है. तो political theory समझने के लिए this concepts, equality, justice and all those things, they have to be first understood by you. ठीक है. Then what is important for political theory? Then what is important from the point of view of political theory, and what is expectation of UPSC from political theory? The most important part that has to be understood by you is approaches. ठीक है. It is basically approaches. ठीक है. So you have to know various ways in which political theory is understood, methodologies through which political theory is studied. For example, behavioral, then we have post behavioral. All right, then we have post behavioral. Please don't mind my spellings sometimes. I am bad at them. All right, then we have to take into consideration normative. Of course, not in the ascending direction. This is not in the chronological way. Normative approach will come first. Normative approach will obviously come first. So these are the approaches, more or less, these are the approaches. Obviously, we'll get into others also, but these are the approaches that UPSC needs you to know. And in fact, questions mostly will be asked on the basis of these approaches. If you basically look into UPSC का question paper political theory से most of the questions will be asked from here. How has a particular approach helped or not helped in understanding the subject? All right. Other thing, obviously, because it is political science, then the relevance of political theory itself and the approaches provided to you, that has to be looked into by you. That has to be basically looked into by you. All right. Second topic, that you should be taking into consideration, that second topic that we will be taking into consideration and having an overview of it, is theories of state. Theories of state. When it comes to theories of states, when it comes to basically theories of state, now what UPSC expects from you? What basically UPSC expects from you? UPSC expects you to know different ideologies on the basis of which states are established, or different ideologies on the basis of which states are expected to be established. It wants you to know different ideas and features of states. ठीक है, different ideas on the basis of which state is established and features of that state, and basically features of that state. All right, यहाँ पे what UPSC also wants you to do is, what UPSC also wants you to do is to compare and contrast the theories. Compare and contrast the theories. Done. If I take into consideration the next part that UPSC expects you to know, again that is from the point of view of contemporary relevance. UPSC will expect you to know whether points provided in a particular theory, is it of relevance today? Will it provide opportunities if that particular feature is adopted? And if that feature is already adopted, what are the demerits with respect to that feature, or what are the merits with respect to that feature? ठीक है, what are the demerits with respect to that feature, what are the merits with respect to that feature? That is what UPSC will expect you to do. That is what UPSC will expect you to know. Contemporary relevance में, for example, discussed Marxist theory of state in the context of its relevance in contemporary politics. 2019 में क्या बोला था मैंने? Relevance. ठीक है, how that idea can be appreciated today, whether it can be appreciated today, that is what is been asked. That is what basically is asked when it comes to theories of state. So remember these pointers when you read this content now. Individually, in what theory what has to be focused upon, हम लोग बात करेंगे. All right, we will talk about it. Then obviously comes the idea of justice. Then comes the idea of justice. ठीक है, obviously from the point of view of this topic in UPSC and syllabus, you are needed to know certain concepts, right? So justice has to be known by you when it comes to this topic being mentioned in the syllabus as a header. ठीक है, justice has to be known by you, but it has to be more specifically be known by you through roles. ठीक है, through roles. And what in roles is important when it comes to justice, obviously, is orientation towards, or is idea of distributive justice. His idea basically of distributive justice. है ना? Now, conceptually, when you bring in distributive justice, what is also needed to be known? Again, this is from the point of view of UPSC questions. ठीक है, रॉल्स ने तो बोल दिया distributive justice, he did not say distributive justice, but he basically what he did was he provided an idea that oriented towards distributive justice. So idea of distributive justice, and second thing which is important is procedure. procedure with which this justice will be provided. Obviously speaking, it is you also basically need to know procedural justice. ठीक है. Obviously with it also comes substantive justice. ठीक है. Can distributive justice be fulfilled through procedural justice? What is the idea of substantive justice? All this obviously detailing will look into it. But this is what UPSC, these are the concepts that UPSC will want you to know. ठीक है. These are the concepts that UPSC will want you to know. And last, provided specifically, is communitarian critique. Communitarian critique of roles. ठीक है. Now ये सारा concepts आपको पता है. Now on the basis of this concept, now when you are going through this concept, now what specifically to focus upon? And what is basically the orientation of UPSC? What basically is the orientation of UPSC? ठीक है. So यहाँ पे ना what I would suggest you is focus upon the framework of justice. Framework of justice. ठीक है. Second thing, you will also have to look into critical analysis of its application. You will have to critically analyze also its application. ठीक है. Now these 2 pointers have to be kept in mind. And when I say critically analyze, now obviously it is critical analysis of communitarians. ठीक है. तो when it comes to application, what they basically said with respect to Rawls theory. तो ये 2 pointers है ना, this you have to remember while you are studying these concepts. एंड ऑल्सो ना इंटरलिंकिंग के बारे में बता देता हूँ. सो सॉरी. देखो यहाँ पे ना व्हेन इट कम्स टू इंटरलिंकिंग, थ्योरी ऑफ स्टेट्स में व्हेन इट कम्स टू इंटरलिंकिंग ना, व्हाट इज नेसेसरी? स्टेट हैज टू प्रोवाइड जस्टिस. स्टेट बेसिकली हैज टू प्रोवाइड जस्टिस. दैट स्टेट इज an institution which is created for the purpose of providing justice. So in a particular type of state which is based on a particular idea, how will ideas like justice, liberty and equality be met? तो यहाँ पे ना you are connecting theory of state with the concepts of liberty, equality, justice. Second thing, again in theory of states ना you have to allocate your understanding with one or the type of constitutional or political structure that we see around. For example, if I talk about in theory of state, if I talk about post-colonial theory of state, obviously I will be connecting it to India. I will be interlinking it with India. If I write an answer on post-colonial state, it is necessary for me to connect it with India or connect it to Bangladesh as such, okay, if that is more in news, or connect it to Pakistan depending upon its contemporary relevance. Okay. If I am basically taking into consideration Marxist theory of state and analyzing it in my answer or writing upon it, so the example that I will provide for the purpose of better elaboration, it will either be depending upon the demand of the question. Now, it will either be Soviet Union, or it will be Vietnam, or it will be North Korea. Again, depending upon the demand of the question. Okay. Now, it may not be the case that the state which is actually in existence will have all the attributes of that particular theory of state. Obviously not. But it will provide me some more writing content and an edge with respect to other students by comparing or contrasting how these theories are actually implemented, or whether they are implemented or not, or to what extent they are implemented by providing illustrations. Next is again the concept of equality. I have today taken all the important pointers. This will actually give you a reference of how to approach and how we will approach the classes that will come. Equality again, from the point of view of only equality as a concept that is mentioned particularly in the syllabus. Now, what I will refer to, I will refer to the concept of socio-economic equality, socio-economic equality, political equality obviously, and affirmative actions that are necessary to provide substantive equality, actual equality. ठीक है, actual equality not in the sense कि सबको equal कर दो in terms of paying money, not that. Equality that is equality that takes away me, equality that is providing me with opportunities, that is substantive equality. Detailing we will do it, ठीक है, don't worry. Affirmative actions that are required to create real equality. For example, in India we provide reservation, ठीक है. Now what is the expectation of UPSC? If I take into consideration expectation, when it basically comes to studying equality, studying these three concepts, I will have to first and foremost interconnect them. And showcase or take into consideration how one form of equality, for example social equality, how it is connected to economic equality, how economic equality is connected to political equality, how political equality is connected to social equality, and the other things. ठीक है, other things यानी तीनों कैसे एक दूसरे को इन्फ्लुएंस करते हैं, how these three types of equality influence each other, how these three types of equalities influence each other, and whether one type of equality, for example economic equality, if it hinders other type of equality, for example political equality. ठीक है, that has to be taken into consideration by me. Other thing that I also have to be taken into consideration is dimensions of each of this type of equality. So if I am talking about social equality now, then there are again dimensions with respect to which I will account for social equality. For example, dimension of gender, dimension of caste, dimension of religion, right? Even in economic equality, there can be dimension of equality of opportunities, equality of outcomes, right? So this is the way in which equality has to be looked into. If I take into consideration political equality, then dimensions on the basis of voting, dimensions on the basis of holding political office. For example, if you take America, it has political equality when it comes to right to vote to each and every citizen of America. But when it comes to right to hold public office, it is not the same. So for example, Elon Musk cannot be the president of America. He basically cannot be the president of America. Then comes where to interlink it. If I take into consideration equality, then where to basically interlink it? The first point of interlinkage is in the neighborhood. ठीक है? The link that can be established with justice. So for example, to explain equality, what may be needed? The concept of justice as a bridge. Or for the purpose of explaining justice, what may be needed? The concept of equality. That interconnection has to be established, and more importantly, Indian Constitution, na baba. How can you talk about equality without Indian Constitution coming into play? इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बेसिकली कमिंग इनटू प्ले. ठीक है. Then let us take rights into consideration as a concept, and what has to be done in it. So if I take into consideration rights, what concepts basically UPSC expects me to know? First is obviously theories of rights, various theories that have been provided on rights. First is that various theories that have been provided on right, that has to go in. Second thing that has to basically go in is that is expected by you to know specifically is legal rights and human rights. Legal and human rights. And now what in legal and human rights, or what in these three concepts, and what should be your attitude towards these three concepts? What basically should be your attitude in these three concepts? तो यहाँ पे ना UPSC basically expects you to know first and foremost. अगर मैं expectation की बात करूँ ना, if I only talk about expectation when it comes to the topic of rights, UPSC expects you to know सबसे पहले role of rights in governance. ठीक है. And second, in practice, what is the position of rights? Position of rights in practice. All right. So for example, question was asked in 2019, can there be universal conception of human rights? Discuss. So it is asking about, ठीक है, concept तो पढ़ लिया, now tell us whether that concept is practical or not. Mainly this is where the topic of rights becomes important from the point of view of UPSC. मतलब that attitude with respect to practical application, it becomes important. अब अगर मैं बोलूं कि यहाँ पे इंटरलिंकेज कहाँ पे है, तो इन द टॉपिक ऑफ राइट्स ना, द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट इंटरलिंकेज दैट यू विल हैव is with respect to global commons, which is located in paper 2. ठीक है. तो human rights has to be connected with global commons, the topic of global commons that is in paper 2. And obviously again you come with Indian Constitution. Without Indian Constitution, without interlinkages, obviously not in all the answers, depending upon the content or the crux of the question, you have to orient it. So it is with respect to the Indian Constitution. Moving ahead, if I have to talk about the next topic, it will be democracy. डेमोक्रेसी. ठीक है. यहां पे conceptually what UPSC wants you to know, it wants you to know basically types of democracies. So types of representation, I would say. Types of representations. Second, it will basically want you to know the level of participations. ठीक है. तो पार्टिसिपेटरी डेमोक्रेसी के बारे में it will want you to know about participatory democracy and the extent to which participation happens in democracy from the point of view of different types of it. Third, an important topic that has come up and it has become, matlab, if the question is on democracy na, this concept is moved forward by UPSC. तो अगर conceptually I talk ना, this word and this concept has been an high, I would say high yielding concept when it comes to marks and when it comes to focusing upon democracy. So democracy may, I will say what has to be focused upon the most, it is deliberative democracy. Also participatory democracy, but I feel deliberative democracy is more important. ठीक है. Now when you do this, when you look at these concepts now, attitude required, expectations from you, expectations. First is analysis. That is looking into both positive and negatives of models of democracy. To what extent are they useful? Even I would say analysis of deliberative democracy, analysis of participatory democracy. That means to what extent they are good or not good and the value judgment with respect to it. Lastly, the extent of democracy. Again, as I told you na, कि a particular type of democracy, a model, to what extent it has been implemented, to what extent it is available. For example, if I study deliberative democracy, concepts related to deliberative democracy, na, I will have to bring in, or UPSC expects me to know how far this deliberative democracy is basically practically observed. How far it is actually observed. How far basically it is practically observed. ठीक है. And to what extent it is basically used. Alright, so for example, a question was asked in 2020, deliberative democracy seeks to promote decision making in public issue among citizens discuss. Obviously they want to know कि भाई होता है कि नहीं होता है ऐसे. If it happens or not happens, deliberative democracy provides decision making power to the people. So they are asking you practically, what is the limit of, practically does it happen or not? Practically basically it happens or not. Again, if you take into consideration democracy, again it is one of the global commons. ठीक है, something mentioned in paper 2. ठीक है, something mentioned in paper 2. So you have to connect it with the topics in paper 2. When it comes to democracy, na, it also becomes an important point of interlinking with comparative politics. And how can we forget? How can we basically forget Panchayati Raj institutions? Deliberative democracy or the topic of democracy has to be directly connected to Indian Constitution. And more importantly, na, I will say the way in which questions are asked, it is important for you to look at deliberative democracy from the point of view of Panchayati Raj elections or Panchayati Raj institutions for that matter. Alright, moving on, power as a concept. Power as a concept. What is needed to be known? Obviously, concepts like hegemony, provided by Gramsci, legitimacy, provided by Weber, Max Weber, and then ideology. Ideology with respect to power. What role basically ideology plays when it comes to power. ठीक है. Expectation. How is power basically manifested by different institutions? ठीक है. What is the expectation? To know expectation which institute manifests power, way in which it is done, and obviously the extent to which it is done. extent basically to which it is done. All right. Obviously, things like hegemony, legitimacy, they are directly connected to a particular thinker. So you basically have to connect it to them. With respect to hegemony, you have to showcase if an institute. Other interlinkage will be when you basically showcase an institute or basically a country exercising that hegemony. For example, if you write about hegemony, if you write about power, if you write about hegemony, now obviously what will also come up if the question demands the interlinkage between the concept of hegemony and the way in which China has been behaving in Indo-Pacific. In which China has been behaving with Indo-Pacific, in the Indo-Pacific. Legitimacy, institute which basically performs a role and that role is appreciated. For example, Supreme Court of India, right? We talk about judicial activism, but then judicial activism is appreciated. Judicial activism basically is judiciary getting into the areas of other organs of the government. Okay? If you see by and large, people accepting it now. Why? Because there is legitimacy. Okay? It is the decision of people to exercise, to see Supreme Court exercise that power and they are happy with it. Okay? To the extent, the way in which it is done and the extent to which it is done. Alright, that is expected by you to be known. And then we come to the three main topics of section 1 paper A. First is political ideology. Very lengthy topic. Political ideologies. Alright, in political ideologies, obviously different types. You have to know their salient features, their features basically. And various thinkers who basically provided for those ideologies. Various thinkers who basically provided for those ideologies. Next thing that has to be known or that is expected from you. Now this is very important. Expectations, because ideology pe question aata hi aata hai. Question does come on ideology, and second thing is ideology is obviously connected to other topics. So expectations mein what we will be looking for? When we study ideology, you will have to look into evolution of that particular ideology. For example, socialism. One popular question, in fact this is one of the questions that has been repeated over the period of time. Okay, socialism is a hat that has lost its shape. ये तब भी आता था, मतलब it is a question जो मेरे से पहले वाले ज़माने में भी आता था. It had appeared one of the years in which I was giving my mains, and it is even appearing today. ठीक है, socialism is a hat that has lost its shape. मतलब what is this question about? This question basically is about evolution of the ideology. ठीक है, if you take into consideration liberalism, again this type of question you will see from classical to positive, from positive to neo. Question will be based upon how that evolution has happened, how that evolution basically has happened. When it comes to feminism again, from liberal to radical, from radical to Marxist. Again, what we see with respect to evolution is how that ideology is seeing a particular concept in its different forms. For example, the way in which classical liberals saw the state now, it is different from the way in which positive liberals saw it, and it is different again from the way in which neoliberals saw it, right, or are seeing it. So when it comes to evolution of ideologies, remember what has to be pinpointed. The central concept, how it tries to change without basically changing the general idea of the ideology. Okay? General idea. So general idea of liberalism remains the same, but the way in which it sees central concept, for example, role of state, okay? How it sees it to differ, that becomes important. That basically becomes important. All right, so it is not only important to know the points that have changed, मतलब वो रट्टा नहीं मारना है, right? You have to understand how, what basically is the difference between how a central character in the ideology, now how it is seen, that differs. ठीक है? And when I say that now, you have to also look into the reasons, because question will be asked from that mindset. Even if it is not asked now, you have to provide for it. You have to basically provide for it. All right. Second thing, relevance, obviously. Relevance, 100%. Right. And third, I would say, is critique or criticism of a particular ideology. Which is criticism of a particular ideology. ठीक है? That is what basically is important from ideology. Now, ideology is that topic na, in which interconnections are wide. For example, comparison between different types of ideology: liberalism, Marxism, socialism, Gandhiism and Marxism. ठीक है? So when we do this topic na, special care will be taken with respect to comparisons. ठीक है? Also remember, comparisons have to be based upon certain characters. ठीक है? Certain characters. For example, state. When we will be doing this topic now, we will be taking into consideration what characters are basically, or what ideas basically become central to comparisons. Without this नहीं होगा. ठीक है? Reading ideologies and then coming to comparisons based on seeing the question, अरे यार justice पे तो liberalism अलग बोल रहा है, Gandhism अलग बोल रहा है. That cannot be taught by you in the heat of the examination. We will have to do. ठीक है? We will have to do in this particular series of lectures. ठीक है? As I told, interlinking तो इसमें बहुत scope है. Then we come to Indian political thoughts and Western political thoughts. I will take them together. Indian and Western political thoughts. ठीक है? So यहाँ पे ना, obviously thinkers are mentioned. For example, in Indian political thought, अर्थशास्त्र, धर्मशास्त्र, बुद्धिस्ट political thought. ठीक है? Then we have Gandhi, then we have Dr. Ambedkar, M.N. Roy, ठीक है? And Aurobindo Ghosh. Obviously, these are the important thinkers. When it basically comes to Western political thinkers, obviously there is Plato, Aristotle, Machiavelli, Locke, उससे पहले Hobbes, then Locke, J.S. Mills, we have Karl Marx, we have Gramsci, then Hannah Arendt. ठीक है? These are important thinkers. Also, there are thinkers which may not be directly mentioned in your bracket of thinkers. जहाँ पे thinkers लिखा है ना, you may not find the mention of individual thinkers over there, but those thinkers are important because they are mentioned somewhere else. For example, John Rawls. ठीक है? He is not mentioned in the bracket of thinkers ना, but he is important. Sometimes he is important to write answers on these thinkers. Where it has to be done, we will look into it. Then there are those thinkers which are not mentioned in the syllabus, but then they become important. For example, Rousseau becomes important from the point of view of explaining positive liberalism, or the impact that he created on people like John Locke, the impact that he created on people like J.S. Mills. Bentham, not mentioned in syllabus anywhere, but then important from the point of view of writing the answer if necessary, जबरदस्ती नहीं घुसेड़ना है, for the purpose of writing answer on J.S. Mills. Socrates, गंगोत्री है वो तो, of Western political thought, right? If necessary, then connection with Plato and Aristotle becomes important. Na? Right? So not Now, what has to be basically looked into? What have to be basically looked into when you study these thinkers? You have to first and foremost look into contribution of ideas. Contribution of ideas. Second thing that has to be looked into, comparisons. Comparisons between different political ideas, different political thinkers. Comparisons between different political thinkers. All right. So how you can basically compare Hobbes and Locke. Both were liberal. Okay. Now there is question mark over the liberalism of Hobbes, but broadly he is considered to be liberal. यार इतना बुरा मत करो उस बेचारे के साथ. ठीक है. Comparison between Marx and Gandhi, comparison between Aurobindo Ghosh and Gandhi, comparison between Syed Ahmad Khan and Aurobindo Ghosh and their conception of India. Right? So basically, these are the two attributes that you have to focus upon. What they contributed to and how far that contribution basically went. Right? And second is of course comparisons. ठीक है. Guys, we'll stop here for today. ठीक है. We'll stop here for today. Those who are part of this particular program, please, I am requesting you to write one answer every day and send it to me. ठीक है. Other thing is, this analysis has not stopped. ठीक है. But we have completed the analysis of section A part 1. Now we will start with PYQ discussions of section A part 1. When we basically go to section B part 1 ना, उससे पहले ऐसा ही analysis I will do over there, but it will not require time because then you will be settled in that particular idea. पहले से ही सब कुछ करूंगा तो जब तक you will reach there, it may not be fruitful. So we are done with the analysis of section 1 part A. Section A part 1 we are done with it. Now we will start with all these topics and analyze PYQs of them. ठीक है. चलो, best of luck and we'll have a great journey together. Bye.